hit the screen share here. And I'll start us out with the little Blavatsky quote book that I found June 30th. If out of the material portion of the ether, by virtue of the inherent restlessness of its particles, the forms of worlds and their species of plants and animals can be evolved. Why out of the spiritual part of the ether should not successive races of beings from the stage of moment to that of man be developed, each lower form unfolding a higher one until the work of evolution is completed on our earth in the production of immortal man? Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, page 340. There's one little thing I'd like to bring up with that is in Theosophy, I know that ether has a very specific meaning. It's, the word is used so differently in so many different disciplines and schools of thought. Does anybody have kind of a good understanding, a good explanation of what kind of the ether is we're talking about here?
Probably look. I mean, we do, but
I mean, that's the idea.
philosophy.
Yeah, yes.
Basically in Theosophy, it's more. In other schools, they talk about the ether as being the same as a kasha and the same as the astrolite,
right.
Which in a certain sense it is, but it's like saying electricity is magnetism. They're in the same ballpark,
wheelhouse.
but they have their own function on their own plane, and they operate in their own qualities. So let's see.
Or like chi, there's many different types of chi.
Oh, yeah.
People just think of one type of chi, but there's many.
Absolutely.
Different.
I mean, you start to cross into the realm of elemental with some chi.
Okay, so let me read what she has in the glossary to give an idea from the Theosophics point of view. It says, ether. Students are but too apt to confuse this with akasha, which is astrolite. It is neither. In the sense in which ether is described by physical science, ether is a material agent, though hitherto undetected by any physical apparatus, whereas akasha is a distinctly spiritual agent, identical in one sense with the anima mundi, while the astral light is only the seventh and highest principle of the terrestrial atmosphere, as undetectable as akasha and real ether, because it is something quite on another plane. The seventh principle of the Earth's atmosphere, as said, the astral light, is only the second on the cosmic scale. The scale of cosmic forces, principles, and planes of emanations on the metaphysical and evolutions on the physical plane is the cosmic serpent biting its own tail, the serpent reflecting the higher and reflected in its turn by the lower serpent. The Caduceus explains the mystery, and in turn, and the fourfold dodecahedron, on the model of which the universe is said by Plato to have been built by the manifested logos, synthesized by the unmanifested firstborn, yields geometrically the key to cosmogony and its microcosmic reflection, our Earth. So in here, she's pointing out that ether is within the scale of akasha and astrolite, but it's more like a third energy principle, and it's neither of those two. We can think, from an akashic point of view, that's the highest spiritual essence, which also contains the highest intelligence and information. The astrolite is the lowest level of all of those planes, or as she says here, the highest level of the material plane. It's still material.
Yeah.
Although most of us don't see it. You go to a fortune teller, some true fortune tellers can see it. And so that is the kind of thought plane of humanity and the storehouse.
Mm.
So when people, kind of question Nostradamus, how did he know? He used to use a metal bowl
Yeah.
to
Right.
visualize in the astral light and make his predictions, which carries, future possible events and all historic events.
Mm. That's really interesting.
I have a quick question to that because I was reading I was reading something of like the Hinduism philosophy, and they're speaking about like Vritta and Chitta, which are like we say it's like the
Stuff.
yeah, the mind stuff and the waves and everything.
Mm.
And so what was I gonna say? And then like someone else spoke about like the mind substance, like when you think, they explain it like as waves that go out. And then the Sikhs they call the nadi is like the sound current of like where people go and like get mantras and things like that. So then that's, I guess the sound current would be considered like Vritta, I mean, possibly like the mind stuff, but would that be considered, with that explanation, would you think that would be considered part of the ether? Like that because the nadi, which is the sound current, holds record of all different sounds. So that's kind of like what Akasha does. But I guess it's kind of saying what you're saying, because that's like kind of like the Akasha, but it also is like the heavier substance where everything floats upon, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, all that's correct. If you think about the Akashic plane, the astral plane, the ether plane, kind of being on this plane similar to frequencies.
Oh yeah.
There's bass, there's mid-range, there's treble. All of them are carrying sound. All of them are carrying a intelligence. They have even a note. A note has a certain amount of intelligence in it. That's why, at the beginning they were talking about mantras. The syllables themselves and the right pronunciation create a force that this semi-material plane then transmits. The scientists know some of it because they have radio dishes trying to pick up signals from way out in space because sound travels so far. So when they're saying the mind plane, yes, but the mind plane from a theosophical point of view, we have different aspects of it. We use our mind as kind of like it is as a motor. We can have thoughts that are very materialistic. We can have thoughts that are very spiritual. We have thoughts that are all based on a desire. What I want, what I need. I don't like this, I don't like that. So those planes are all interacted with nature. The higher beings have the lower aspect of their minds developed and under control. The highest, let's say someone like a Dalai Lama, who can at will raise its mind to the plane of universal consciousness, witness and experience there, then you have to be able to bring it back. And that's the key, having a mind that's going to function on this plane, can bring it back and can interpret it and tell people that don't understand that spiritual plane, interpret it in a way that they'll grab an understanding. So in Theosophy, we say everyone is connected on that plane. Everyone. Even the most evil person is connected on that plane. What limits us is knowing and experiencing that experience on that plane. And that's where meditation and full development comes in. Psychology talks about subconscious mind, which it depends what they're talking about. But in a sense, you could say subconscious mind is the same as our animal nature or the body's own developed mechanism to digest your food, take in the air, make it function. It's so automatic that we don't even have to think about it. If you developed your mind to a point like some adepts and some meditators, even on a low level, they can access that part of their mind and raise their temperature when it's cold outside and don't need a jacket, or lower their temperature when they're sick and they need to just lower their temperature. They can control that because they've developed it. So Theosophy is explaining that we have these states of consciousness that we emanate into. Like you said, people think and those thoughts go into a place. What we don't consciously know is what that emanation has an effect. It all has an effect, and there's departments in nature to receive it, but we're trying to be more conscious so that we're not making the effects of things worse by the way we think, and also trying to get more in tune with the universal consciousness of everybody, not just of all the people, not just of all the animals and plants, but of the higher beings that are trying to work with us. But it's like trying to have sunlight come through on a cloudy day. There's only a few patches where people can be receptive to then experience that and do something with it.
Owen had a question too.
More like, sorry, not really a question, it's more of a statement. To go into the inference for both of you kind of getting it. So I loved Hermes Lodge and Bruce version was pretty effective creator. I was studying, I believe 2 weeks ago, there was a notice magnanimous that was talking about the body is the divine temple. And therefore, if the body is the divine temple, then it is thus then a map to reference like the Kabbalion, like everything has causation to its effect or effect to its causation. So from for instance, like your feet, right? It would be a representation of like the lower. It was just a really funny dichotomy of like your feet would represent like the pit comparative to where the chakra is, where it's like the highest existing plane. But if your body is then pure or unclean, those places are then thus the lessons to that alchemy, which is provided from like soul, mercury, or sulfur. So that's the first 3 steps to that.
I have series on like 2 now for a second when we started describing what the being representing the hand and saying.
Yeah, so from the body, it's like a map. So if you go into the occultic anatomy, it's like for instance, your Kabbalion map, like your grid, your energetic grid, their sacral chakras, and it just goes into. I was acknowledging what both of you guys said. And to reference that, it's just that, we all have lessons in life. And I think that lesson where we're at is all about where you're at in your temple, whether it be your head is in your feet, your head is in your head, or, it's very important and pertinent to be aware of where we all are in that time and state of existence. So thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yeah, that's a good source.
And that's one of that's like in the last week in the article Chelas and Lay Chelas and the Blavatsky articles, we came up to this first part of the enumeration of the qualifications, and perfect physical health was the first one, although she said that could be altered a little bit, but and then absolute mental and psychical or physical purity as well as the second one.
Where are we starting?
So
Recapping where
last week. Recapping where we left off, and then we'll start on the bottom of the first page of when the self developing aesthetic.
After all that easy stuff.
Yeah, so the 7 qualifications to just become a Chela are pretty daunting. And it lays out an example of one who is self-reliant, who is very disciplined, has an attitude devoid of any selfishness, has courage, is responsible for their thoughts, words, and acts, has self-reflection with a focus on imagining a master within our heart, and a concentration with a goal of the highest ideal incorporating spiritual ethics. So
I'm sorry, you're reading from the.
no, this is just my notes. I'm just recapping.
Thank you.
Recapping kind of what the 7 qualifications what an example of a person that would follow, and try to perfect these 7 qualifications.
Could you explain what Chela?
So Chela, yeah, Chela and lay Chela. So Chela is basically one who's preparing themselves to be a student of a master or guru, and by like first, incorporating these 7 steps. So like I said, perfect physical health, mental, physical purity, unselfishness of purpose, universal charity, pity for all, and the rest of the 7. They're starting on a path to purify themselves, like we were talking about, to be receptive to that spiritual essence of ourselves, and remember, be able to consciously go to these Akashic planes and witness wisdom and the connection with other beings that are connected there, but then also bring it down with our mental capabilities, like in everyday life, and understand that. And that's what this, what you were all just talking about. That's what being a Chela is to then learn all this, be able to discern in the astral plane, in the Akashic plane, what's real, what's false. There's so many tests that you will have to go through to actually discern, in the voice of the silence, like, there's 3 halls, the halls of ignorance, the hall of learning, the hall of wisdom. So the hall of learning is essentially starting to develop these inner senses, but then there's all the thoughts from humanity, of whatever level of humanity. So you have to and other beings. So you have to make it discern.
You said the whole of sound physical.
In the voice.
There's a book on meditation that HPB wrote. Here.
Yeah.
So in that book, she's kind of poetically describing states of consciousness and experiences you'll go through, raising your consciousness into these planes. So it's kind of written for us to be able to understand it in a certain way. It's part of her, her training that she went through. But those 3 halls that she talks about in the beginning, the hall of ignorance is this daily world. The hall of learning is the astral plane, where she said you're going to start seeing visions and hear sounds, and
your inner senses are awakening.
Yeah, your inner senses are developing, where you can actually function in this world, but they're not developed, and you have to be able to develop these senses and make a discerning between what is true and what is false. Because she said it's more deceptive than this plane because it's of its ability. And then the hall of wisdom is the Akashic plane. So,
In page 6, that book. And if you notice at the beginning of the book, it says, it's dedicated right here. It says, chosen fragments from the book of the golden precepts for the daily use of Lanus, which means Chela or disciple. That's the Chela, disciple, Lanu. She was using that earlier term a lot more in the Theosophical magazines, like in India. She was using that, the Lanus. Yeah, that term a lot more. So this is a very good book for kind of go through it. And it's what is it called? The book of what?
Precepts.
It's good. Precepts. Book of John? My book. Standing up, it's a devotional book. Oh yeah, very intuitive reading, like the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. When you read it, it seems like they wrote it for me.
In the first grade of the Masons, they have the first grade is apprentice, and I was comparing this term with Chelas. This is, according to explanation, is
Yeah,
apprenticeship.
yeah.
Apprenticeship,
Yeah,
yeah.
apprenticeship.
Difference grade.
Yeah.
And then lay chelas, she describes as someone that's like mostly someone that might be married or in a relationship and still has duties to their family, so that's starting to accomplish some of these qualifications. But she always says, like, you never give up your duties. If you have a family or something like that, never give up those duties. Those are your first duties. You can still study and be on this path, but you have those responsibilities. You never give up any daily, responsibilities.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, like with tests, when they're talking about tests, it's not like the tests that we do, or it's not the kind of initiations when you join a fraternity and it's nothing like that. It's all psychological experiences, and it's all how you handle daily life that karmically is going to change because of your desire to be a Chela or to awaken more spiritual power. And if we look at any of the movies that have written about it, whether it's Harry Potter or Star Wars, it's kind of a narrative fairy tale version of what they're describing. And they put forces and stuff that you got to deal with. And it's all really dealing with human characteristics and qualities that aren't good and that are good. And you trying to wean off and purify that aspect of yourself so that you're useful to these higher powers and you can apply them in a beneficial way.
I want to say something that struck something because I just came back from Texas. When I was in Texas, I started all of a sudden becoming obsessed. I always loved like Jedi and stuff. Like I always read it, but I started becoming obsessed like their philosophy and everything. And I've always been more on the side of the Jedi. But then I read this book when it was talking about this dude. He was like the craziest Sith ever. He like killed everybody or whatever. And so they were talking about how it was pretty much talking about how much too much light blinds us too little. And like the problem with the Jedi was always that they denied, they said no passion. Well, this is something I was like building upon because they're like no passion, only peace, right? And because of that, a lot of the Jedi fell to the dark side because they were taught never to feel their emotions. So when their emotions came, they became seduced by it. And I was so that brings me like a thought because like I noticed that. And then, but the Sith, which are like the dark side, they fall completely to their emotions and they get consumed by it. So like going off of what you're talking about, that was something that's something that I've been like trying to better understand because I know like as like a Chela going with that path, it's kind of like along the lines of like what a Jedi would go with. However, I think like denial. I made up in my journey like denial of your emotions can leave you susceptible to the emotions coming back because they're like anger is the path to the dark side, but then anger is also a part of your body right now. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but it made me think of like what you're saying.
Well,
let me
and then we can discuss that. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that we read a few weeks ago, and William Q. Judge, who was a co-worker with Madame Blavatsky in the culture of concentration, he describes also being on this path and the growth of our inner astral form, but he warns that and with our inner astral, that's where our inner senses are being developed. But he says that the control of emotions is essential, especially of anger. And he says that anger is the worst one, because that one actually like explodes this astral form into bits, and like, you know, then any work you've done, it just, you know, kind of like disperses. So then you have to kind of start all over. Then, you know, there's envy, vanity, and fear also. All of those, you know, can have a detrimental effect on this growing astral form that we're going to be using for these inner senses and for this journey. So to have a control, you will like, it's an interesting kind of, it's not a denial, but it's you know, a lot of people talk about being the observer of your thoughts, your emotions. So you're the observer of that. You recognize those emotions, those thoughts happening, but you're not totally controlled by them. So that's kind of the difference between like denying emotions and recognizing them, but you're not being pushed, pulled this way or that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason based on Buddhism, is because it's, you know, they're always struggling with attaining the middle way. And it's like, you know, either side of these extremes can't understand why the middle way is important. And in Theosophy, there's, you know, nothing's ever an absolute. We're never black or white. That's why everybody's such a big Plato fan.
That's funny because the Sith, they always say like, because I was like, so I like wrote like a bunch of different things about it, but they're like Sith only deal in absolutes.
Sure, exactly, yeah.
But then the Jedi deal in absolutes. Every time the Jedi deal in absolutes, then it's like every becoming Sith.
Yeah, it just.
And then that's what I think. Whenever like one side believes in more of an absolute, then that whole side gets destroyed, and that's how the cycle keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. You're so inflexible with an absolute. It just leads to, I mean, nothing. You can't learn. You can't grow. You can't nothing.
So then, how is that? How would that achieve balance? How would both sides achieve balance?
I mean, that's what this is about. Through Chela, that's definitely a way. I think, but something that's really interesting about this as well is like that it's pretty normal in the world of like, you know, Eastern Buddhism for a monk to spend years and years and years training under all of these masters, and to be told like, you're done being a monk, now you go teach, now you go out because you have a certain talent, you're good at conveying this, you're not a guy that should be in a mountain meditating for the next 15 years. And so, I mean, just Lama Shabda, we was exactly with him. He thought he was going to be a monk forever, and he was like, "What? No, I had to come over," you know. And so I think, yes, if you're called, and I think a lot of the way to recognize that call without it being ego or our own, I'm a Chela, or a lot of people that profess there's something occult or spiritual usually are, you know, not because that's vanity. And so, you know, it's like this is how to kind of get through that. It's kind of hard to have vanity if you're working on all 7 of these much less sustaining.
Yeah.
Well, I will say something that real fast. So I was like, before I came back out, like right before when I met Neil, as soon as I came back to LA. But before that, the way I got introduced to all this is like I went to like live by myself in Arizona, and I was like, I'm gonna get rid of all my thoughts. And then I found these books, as I was like reading these books, and like it took me a long time, it took me like 6 months to get rid of all my thoughts. Then I was meditating every day, and I'm like, I felt like I could float, like I'm like friggin' genius or whatever. So I come back into society, and I go to New York, and I immediately like crazy.
Yeah.
And then like I came back, and then I'm like, I don't have to do this. But then I heard the story of like the monk guy that like he like went to like meditate underwater, and like after like 70 years, then he became like a master, and then he like floats into town or something, and then someone stepped on his shoe. He's like, "What the fuck?" So he's like, he just lost all the, like I said. Oh yeah, that's exactly what he said. The whole thing exploded. And I feel like that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I could have did it. It's so easy to do it by yourself. But like, it's been like 5
In the world. Well, then, yeah.
And I'm like, I only the amount of time work I did, like when I was like 2 months, like 5 years, whatever each thing. I had to be able to do all the comparison. Good.
Okay, let's get into the article. So we're on the page where it's
Oh, the first page. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, on the readout is the second page, and we're starting with when the self-evolving ascetic, whether in or outside the active world. James, you're a really good reader. Would you like to read that?
Okay.
Thank you. And read up to till the end of that paragraph, please.
Okay. When the self-evolving ascetic, whether in or outside the active world, had placed himself, according to his natural capacity, above, hence made himself master of his 1. Sarira, body; 2. Indriya, senses; 3. Dosha, thoughts; 4. Dukkha, pain; and is ready to become one with his manas, mind; Buddhi, intellection or spiritual intelligence; and Atma, highest soul, example, spirit. When he is ready for this, and further, to recognize in Atma the highest ruler in the world of perceptions, and in the will, the highest executive energy, power, then may he, under the time-honored rules, be taken in hand by one of the initiates. He may then be shown the mysterious path at whose thither end the Chela is taught the unerring discernment of Phala, or the fruits of causes produced and given the means of reaching Apavarga, emancipation, from the misery of repeated births, in whose determination the ignorant has no hand, and thus of avoiding Pratya-bhava, transmigration.
Okay. So yeah, what stood out to me in this is to recognize Atma, the highest ruler in the world of perceptions, and in the will, the highest executive energy power.
What do they mean by highest executive energy, or power, the highest energy that's active, that's producing effects, or do they mean something else?
No, I think I think it can be that, but in the will, it's the highest spiritual will.
Okay.
To act, we have many, we talked about will before. Will is devoid of any moral precepts or ethics. It's how we project, will, how we act with our will. And we know will of the lower mind versus will of the higher mind is in the battle. And
Sure.
this,
And one thing I think right here at the very end of what we read, where he says, the Chela is taught the unerring discernment of Phala, or the fruits of causes produced, and given the means of reaching Apavarga, which is emancipation. Emancipation from the misery of repeated births. And see, the idea here is not just to be emancipated from the births, but become aware of it. For example, that doesn't mean that you're going to stop being reborn. I think at that time, what happens is that you begin embodying forms, but consciously. You become aware of it. And so therefore, the idea is not to get away from reincarnating, but to reincarnate consciously. And that's what that gets to. And other ways, this might sound like freedom of, this emancipation, you will not reincarnate again.
Moksha.
Motion, okay.
So it's like moksha.
yeah, it's not just an escape.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I liked that sentence too, because then it taught the unerring discernment and the fruits of causes produced. So working on that causal plane, understanding the causes behind what the effects are, and seeing that as the truth, which that's what the path is, to discern, have this discernment of what is really true from false. Okay, so then, anyone else have any questions or comments? Anyone online have any questions or comments?
Today.
Barbara Rose.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening to everything. Thank you.
Okay.
Does it sound good, Barbara?
Oh, it sounds great. Thank you. I hear
Excellent.
everything so clearly. Beautiful.
So, there are many Theosophists during this time that wanted to become Chelas without really having the idea of what it took with these, 7 pre-qualifications. Blavatsky kind of says like they wanted to try to be Chelas. They didn't want to really do the work. They were complaining. They had this sort of sense of entitlement that they were studying Theosophy, therefore they should have this chance to be a Chela. And so
A lot
further
of people demanding to be Chelas.
demanding, not really wanting to do the work, but thinking they should. So further down, we skip the next paragraph, but then further down where it starts, all were refused at first. Colonel Alcott, the president himself, to begin with. And as to the latter gentleman, there is now no harm in saying that he was not formally accepted as a Chela until he had proven by more than a year's devoted labors and by a determination which brooked no denial that he might safely be tested. Then from all sides came complaints from the Hindus, who ought to have known better, as well as from Europeans who, of course, were not in a condition to know anything at all about the rules. The cry was that unless at least a few Theosophists were given a chance to try, the society could not endure. Every other noble and unselfish feature of our program was ignored. A man's duty to his neighbor, to his country, his duty to help, enlighten, encourage, and elevate those weaker and less favored than he, all were trampled out of sight in the insane rush for adeptship. The call for phenomena resounded in every quarter, and the founders were impeded in their real work and teased importunately to intercede with the Mahatmas, against whom the real grievance lay, though their poor agents had to take all the buffet. At last, the word came from the higher authorities that a few of the most urgent candidates should be taken at their word. The results of the experiment would perhaps show better than any amount of preaching what Chelaship meant, and what are the consequences of selfishness and temerity. Each candidate was warned that he must wait for years in any event before his fitness could be proven, and that he must pass through a series of tests that would bring out all there was in him, whether bad or good. They were nearly all married men, and hence were designated lay chelas, in a new term in English, but having long had its equivalent in Asiatic tongues. A lay chela is a man but of the world who affirms his desire to become wise in spiritual things. Virtually every member of the Theosophical Society who subscribes to the second of our 3 declared objects is, which was the 3 objects, is the 3rd one was to recognize the psychic abilities latent in ourselves. It's such for, though not of the number of true chelas, he has yet the possibility of becoming one, for he has stepped across the boundary line which separated him from the others, and has brought himself, as it were, under their notice. So I'm going to stop there, because she's basically, well, actually, no, let me go further. So the joining is then the introduction. All the rest depends entirely upon the member himself, and he need never expect the most distant approach to the favor of one of our Mahatmas or any other Mahatma in the world, should the latter consent to become known, that has not been fully earned by a personal merit. The Mahatmas are the servants, not the arbiters of the law of karma. Lay Chelaship confers no privilege upon anyone except that of working for merit under the observation of a master. So yeah, so all the complaints of not being able to have a chance of Chelaship, he was just, they were saying, well, that they were going to give some, a chance, but they need to know what the work is, and it's serious work.
It's
I have
interesting
one
that,
question.
go ahead.
It's on the patient of room number 299. In the book, they say about Chela. It's before that time where we are living right now.
Okay.
And that one they say, you can have to be the center.
Oh, the very beginning of the article.
Oh, the
Chela.
299, yes.
Yeah.
But of Chelas, the article before Chelas and Lay Chelas.
Oh,
So
So you want me to read the highlight? Yes.
yeah, let us know.
Now, this wrong idea must be corrected once for all. There are Chelas and Chelas, just as there are Mahatmas and Mahatmas. There are Mahatmas, in fact, who are themselves the Chelas of those who are higher yet. But no one, for an instant, could confound a Chela who has just begun his troublous journey with that greater Chela who is a Mahatma.
Yeah. And also I find that in another book, because I was looking what is the definition of what is about the Chela. Because after we read the seven required,
Right.
the seven
Yeah.
required about, I said, oh my goodness, everybody was going to be Chela, is going to be the person, the perfect person. And they say, no. It's no, after that one, is not only good Chela. Could be, but Chela.
Yeah.
It's incredible after everything. And then when I have a compare about the voice of the silent, because it's the power. Everybody can be excellent person until they prove if we are good person. And this is the good Chela. So it's the power. This one, because we start like we were talking about the astral planes, that one is only like power, but lower power. That's why in concentration, we say we have to go through that. Because if the person is staying in the astral, it's the temptation to be no good person or no good Chela. So that I was incredible to say that, let me read again, because after the seven required could be bad Chela. So that's why I prefer to read that one.
Your explanation is really good, and we have examples of it. People that are just everyday people, that if you know them and you know of them, and they're good people, they seem fine, no problems, they're nice to everybody. They get famous, they make a lot of money, and they change, or they don't, because there's people that don't change. They when they get more power, they get more money, they get more fame, they do more with it to help people or their experiences better. But their nature doesn't change and make them more petty, more prejudiced against other people, more unaccepting against someone else's ideas. And that's what this is talking about when it's saying you will be tested by life, by karma, and how you survive that test will determine if you're able to go into these higher planes. Because each plane that we get higher, if you develop to a point where you can see in the astral light and you know what people think and you know how people feel, that gets to his question, if you ignore your feelings, you can have a tendency just to become cold and calculating and intelligent. And the more power you have, the more calculating you use that intelligence, because you're not in feeling harmony with the rest of humanity, or your emotions can get in control of you. It's all about being in control. And so, yeah, I mean, it's when it's saying here, there's going to be tests. Life presents us tests in ways we never imagined. And sometimes you could have a really bad string in life, lasts a few months, a few years. And then the next thing you know, you have the best period of your life, and vice versa. And it's how do you handle it? How do you handle the diversity? How do you handle the bad? How do you handle the good? When you get, if you just take the path and you're like, I'm not going to accept the good, then you're, on the other hand, you're being blind to the gifts of your development. But if you use that and those gifts of development to become boastful, to become powerful, to become manipulative, then those powers you'll start to lose. And that's kind of what she's saying here. And the difference, an adept who is developed to a certain level is still a student to a higher adept, and still has to take certain guidance from a higher adept. Otherwise, they're just at a plateau that they're not going to go up. And I think it's interesting for us to keep that in mind. The other thing that right where Kelly stopped, it says, and whether that master be or be not seen by the Chela makes no difference whatever as to the result. His good thoughts, words, and deeds will bear their fruit, his evil ones theirs. So it's also reminding possible Chelas, possible lay Chelas, that you are probably already, by your desire and your effort, you're already being observed. You're already being possibly guided. The test for you is to see if you can sense when you're being guided and act on that, and to be able to know when you're just acting from your own personal selfish nature. Because as a Chela develops, they're in mental tune with their adept teacher, guide. Sometimes that teacher will be a physical teacher, sometimes it won't. And if you're trying to enter states of consciousness that are mental states, those teachers are existing in the mental atmosphere. So, like HPB, before she met her masters physically, she saw them in dreams. That's how she was able to recognize them when she saw them physically in a park. He didn't come to her door or go to meet her for lunch. She saw him in a park. And when she saw him and she recognized them, and then he gave her, certain work she had to do. And that was just, she had about 20 years worth of work after that, before she even started writing the books. So that's the thing. And all philosophies have some same principle of that. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So if you're looking for them at the grocery store, maybe they will be there, but maybe not. And if you're going to all these different places trying to meet the teacher, you can, like here, you can meet students that are studying, and we grow and we learn by each other's understanding and experiences. We've all had a variety of experiences, good and bad. So we can learn from that. Whether someone is a master or a teacher, that's kind of immaterial here. When the time comes, you will know. And you will, then be on a journey where you're going to get some guidance. And maybe then, like he gave the example of Lama Karma, said, he was studying a Lama, and then they tell him, go out in public now, see how you do, and help other people get a certain level of awareness. So, yeah, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, that this kind of study is an occult study, which means it's your inner planes of nature that you're developing.
Okay, we have Oman, then Roberto, and then Dustin.
So I just wanted to, it's really funny that you mentioned that because as I was thinking, it'd be really cool if I was ever able to meet my teachers physically. You had said that 2 minutes after. I was like, oh. So, I'm very, I guess for myself, I just personalized my own intuition is very hyper interactive or intuitive. I guess like from a younger age at like 13, 14 years old, because I grew up in foster care. I was always adept to, my background, I grew up in a Pentecostal church as a younger kid in Cleveland, Ohio. So, he was a pastor for a long time. He, started his own church, and my family is very well versed in that. And I should mention on my mother's side, we come from the McCarthy's, which is like the Dinellis, the Irish Dinellis. I had no idea about it, but as far as like, intuition or anything that goes, one of my teachers was worshipful Mary Gamer, Boulder City, O'Shea Lunch. And he taught me, and going events as well as taking care of the body. When you said the student is ready, the teacher appears. I find myself in that predicament with a lot of the people who come to me, who are not yet aware of the nature of their own nature. And so, in finding that, I just wanted to say I respected that statement because it is very true that in time we progress like through the chain of the hierarchy or whatever. My main question is going to revert to this though. When you are experiencing, I guess, higher consciousness or the states because of the book of the voice of silence. It's not just a book. To me, it's like a guide. I mean, I was going through that and I feel in my higher attainment of that, I could feel the stepping up that there was a resistance. There was like, you get this like, I don't want to, but then I have that urgency as a Gemini to push through it and go, no, but I want to know what's in there, So, but I feel that through that, my own experience, jumping through the different bodies of like the occult, I find myself here at this table with all of them. And, everybody has their own existence, their own states, but more so I view, in my own view, all of you guys as a teacher. So I just want to say that.
That's a good perspective. We can all learn from other people. I mean, if you're around little kids, they haven't been around little kids in a long time, and you're like, wow, they're pretty good at learning. I better watch what I say because they're taking it as gospel, and you're imprinting on a life when you don't even really know it, and they're also observing stuff that you've stopped observing. So we can learn from other people if that's our attitude and our state of mind. You have to be open because every person, as this is saying, every person has that higher spiritual guide within them. Everybody. And it's just whether we can recognize it or listen or learn from someone else's hardships, because everybody goes through hardship. And if you have to go through all of them yourselves, that's going to take a lot of lifetime. And you might have been through the hardships that the person you're witnessing is just now facing, and you might be able to help them. Or you might just be able to listen to give them a chance for their own mind to see a way out of it. But yeah, I mean, it's an important aspect of interacting in a class and in life is to be aware of the other people around you, because they can really help you. And we can learn a lot quicker with everybody than on our own. Definitely.
Yeah, in Buddhism, they say like your enemies are the ones you have the most difficulty with, are your best teachers, and your friends are the extension of yourself. We have Roberto and then Justin.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to it's page number 2 on this
The handout.
handout. And it's the paragraph after the number 7. Well, we have number 7 and then paragraph and the next paragraph. That's what we started reading today. And themselves. And right here we do have an idea of what is the disciple Chela. Now, part of the way she gave a description of a lay Chela, sort of can describe, a married person, if he comply with the rules of the study and application of the life and the three objects, in this case, of the Theosophical movements, which is the brotherhood of humanity, the first one, the comparative study, and then learning about the psychic powers in human beings. So in that order, we know that brotherhood of humanity is the very first step. And that if you somewhere comply with that in daily life, be married, you may be an Chela. But now what I'm going to is really to be the main, the exact one. And if we read that again, also because right here, they're giving us the sevenfold constitution in men.
Yeah.
And right here, if you want to see geometry, you can see Kabbalism, you can see Freemasonry, anything, because all of this can be compared, or at least it would correspond with all the systems. So it says, when the self-evolving ascetic, whether in or outside the active world, has placed himself according to his natural capacity. Say natural capacity, that's interesting, right? Natural capacity above. Hence, make himself master of the body, which he says in Sarira, and then the senses, Indriya, three faults, Dukkha, pain, and he's ready, and he's here. So, and he's ready to become one with his manas. So that will be number 5. And then mind, Buddhi, intellection, and then Atma, his highest principle. So one he becomes one with manas, Buddhi, and Atma, which is the higher triangle, in geometry, then you become one with yourself. That's manas, that's the soul, the human soul. That's what reincarnates. And therefore, if you are ready, if you have done all that, then you are a Chela. So you see how difficult it would be to be a Chela. That doesn't mean you cannot be, because you also saw everyone has the natural capacity to become one. If you are above all of this, all of the senses and everything, and I think that's one of the comments earlier. So how do you balance everything? Because then you find out that you are above all of these things that we are describing. We embody the 7 principles, which are sheets, virtues. So you are not any of that. I'm not the feelings, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my whatever I feel. So I am above that. So once you really feel yourself that you're above that, then you can have this balance, because you do not identify with either one side or the other of the things, or the opposites. And therefore, you reach sort of like gradually your master, because your master or your guru is your higher self. And your higher self, you have to do with higher manas, higher self. And so therefore, in the Kabbalah system will see that here number 7 right here, it will be correspond to the 7 separate. And in Freemason, being one with manas, would correspond with GATU, the great architect of the universe, which is called the Logos sometimes in Theosophy. That will be one with it. But then we see in practice, it didn't say a lot about how to practice that in daily life. Therefore, you get your initiations yourself on your own on daily life, and therefore we don't expect to someone to initiate us. Although, as you mentioned, we are like teacher students at the same time, and that changes.
Yeah. I find it so interesting. I mean, it's such a huge step in studying Theosophy to get a handle on like a lot of what it means to be like a student among others, and not like trying to assert yourself in other ways. The best way to learn from each other, and the best teachers are fellow students. unless, we're lucky enough to find one of these Mahatmas and, kind of stumble upon it. But this is amazing. I love what happens in these rooms and that kind of connection that we all have. It's like something that we can really come to a better nature of something like the septenary nature of the universe of man, which is like such an integral thing to understand because it goes through everything. It's one of those, more than a golden thread passing through all of this. I just wanted to read these quotes that always come up to me. They come up time and time again. I was looking for this one. The first is from Isis, and it's it's from a Christian missionary that met a Burmese monk, and he was trying to compete with him verbally with like spiritual things. And he said, his words are smooth as oil, sweet as honey, and sharp as razors. His mode reasoning and soft, insinuating and acute. So adroitly does he act his part that I, with the strength of truth, was scarcely able to keep him down. That sounds like someone who might be on their way to Chela. That's that kind of control. He's so adroitly does he play his part. Does he know who himself, know his role, and know what he's doing this. And then kind of the opposite of this is a famous quote from Campbell and
Joseph Campbell?
yeah, and the hero at the thousand faces. It's called the holdfast man, I guess is what it's commonly known as. And this is kind of like the opposite of Chelahood, but we meet so many people, and sometimes even ourselves get stuck in this place where we think we're studying or practicing spiritual things, but when you look in the mirror, we're might be a little bit more like close to this holdfast man. It's self-terrorizing, fear-haunted, alert in every hand to meet and battle back the anticipated aggressions of his environment, which are primarily the reflections of the uncontrollable impulses to acquisition within himself. The giant of self-achieved independence is the world's messenger of disaster, even though in his mind he may entertain himself with humane intentions.
Where do you have
The big message of like, it's not just what we're studying and what we're professing, it's what we do. It's how we act. It's that,
Hey, where do you get those quotes?
I'll get it for you. Yeah. Send them to you.
Okay, Luis.
Yeah, according to what I heard tonight is that there are different degrees of chelas, different degrees, and the individual integrate all the phases on the Chela sheet to be a better Chela, or to hold them on the work he's done. And it's good that Roberto mentioned it. And page 200, we have the two systems, the
200 of the secret document.
the Buddha Vidya and also the Kabbalah system. And we have here, this is different. This is the medium of the work that we are doing it. This is the system that works with the lower part of the body, lower part of the system, the septenary system. This is working with this, but also is working with this opera. And I think this is interesting how this system works on the Chela sheet. How do we integrate as a Chelas, integrate the work that we are doing?
Yeah, that's the, one thing as I've been studying Theosophy, I came to realize that there's no end to the learning. You're all, and I found that some people may be like, oh, that's overwhelming. Like, my God, when am I going to be at the end of the truth? I was like, well, isn't that freeing? There's not an end to the learning, but yeah.
That's like the symbol of the snake, this tail.
Yeah.
I might add, very quick. So I come from a very diverse background of mysticism. Let me just say here, I'm 28 years old. I just turned 28. I did not ever expect to be in a position of going through Masonry and Rosicrucianism, and that was already mind-blowing, going from third degree Master Mason, didn't go into any of the Eastern bodies or anything like that. And then going further or within those bodies to from Rosicrucianism to TMO, to traditional Martinist order, then to Golden Dawn. But now being here, it's a real honor. My brother Saxon Olin, he mentioned this place multiple times to me. And he mentioned how much he had actually learned from this place. So his father, Michael Ulmer, is a pretty well-known person as well too. So thank you guys.
All right, so anyone else? We're going to continue reading, but anyone else on my mind? Okay.
Where did we leave off?
So we're gonna,
We've been stuck at the same one, right?
Right after Muhammad. Now he's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna start to read about the tests. This will be,
More easy stuff.
yeah, these are the tests that you're gonna.
So that would be, from the bottom of the third, in the pages that you have, going,
Yeah, number, because now at the very top, it's, what is it, the,
the one before last page, right?
yeah, it's the fourth page.
The whole page.
Now there is a terrible law operative in nature.
Okay, yeah. So it's on the back.
So yeah, the last page, or the second to the.
Second to the last page.
This is-
Just one can read.
Okay, does anyone want, this is gonna be kind of long paragraph. Does anyone want to tackle it? Okay, this, oh, sorry.
I guess, yeah.
Sorry.
Ladies first.
Well, would you like to?
No, that's you.
You could divide it in half.
Yeah. Now, there is a terrible law operative in nature, one which cannot be altered, and whose operation clears up the apparent mystery of the selection of certain chelas, who have turned out sorry specimens of morality these few years past. Does the reader recall the old proverb, "Let sleeping dogs lie"? There is a world of occult meaning in it. No man or woman knows his or her moral strength until it is tried. Thousands go through life very respectably because they are never put to the pinch. This is a truism, doubtless, but it is most pertinent to the present case. One who undertakes to try for chelaship by that very act rouses and lashes to desperation every sleeping passion of his animal nature. For this is the commencement of a struggle for the mastery in which quarter is neither to be given or taken. It is, once for all, to be or not to be. To conquer means adeptship, to fail an ignoble martyrdom. For to fall victim to lust, pride, avarice, vanity, selfishness, cowardice, or any other of the lower propensities is indeed ignoble if measured by the standard of true manhood. The Chela is not only called to face all the latent evil propensities of his nature, but in addition, the whole volume of maleficent power accumulated by the community and nation to which he belongs. For he is an integral part of those aggregates, and what affects either the individual man or the group, town or nation, reacts upon the other. And in this instance, his struggle for goodness jars upon the whole body of badness in his environment and draws its fury upon him. If he is content to go along with his neighbors and be almost as they are, perhaps a little better or somewhat worse than the average, no one may give him a thought. But let it be known that he has been able to detect the hollow mockery of social life, its hypocrisy, selfishness, sensuality, cupidity, and other bad features, and has determined to lift himself up to a higher level. At once he is hated, and every bad or bigoted or malicious nature sends at him a current of opposing willpower. If he is innately strong, he shakes it off, as the powerful swimmer dashes through the current that would bear a weaker one away. But in this moral battle, if the Chela has one single hidden blemish, do what he may, it shall and will be brought to light. The varnish of conventionalities with civilization overlays us all with, let me start over. The varnish of conventionalities which civilization overlays us all must come off to the last coat in the inner self, naked and without the slightest veil to conceal its reality, is exposed. The habits of society, which hold men to a certain degree under moral restraint and compel them to pay tribute to virtue by seeming to be good, whether they are so or not. These habits are apt to be all forgotten, these restraints to be all broken through under the strain of Chelaship. He is now in an atmosphere of illusions, Maya. Vice puts on its most alluring face, and the tempting passions try to lure the inexperienced aspirant to the depths of psychic debasement. This is not a case like that depicted by a great artist, where Satan is seen playing a game of chess with a man upon the stake of his soul, while the latter's good angel stands beside him to counsel and assist. For the strife is in this instance between the Chela's will and his carnal nature, and karma forbids that any angel or guru should interfere until the result is known. With the vividness of poetic fancy, Bulwer Lytton has idealized it for us in his Zazani, a work which will ever be prized by the occultist, while in his strange story, he has with equal power shown the black side of occult research and its deadly perils. Chelaship was defined the other day by a Mahatma as a psychic resolvent, which eats away all dross and leaves only the pure gold behind. If the candidate has the latent lust for money, or political chicanery, or materialistic skepticism, or vain display, or false speaking, or cruelty, or sensual gratification of any kind, the germ is almost sure to sprout. And so, on the other hand, as regards the noble qualities of human nature, the real man comes out. Is it not the height of folly, then, for anyone to leave the smooth path of commonplace life to scale the crags of Chelaship without some reasonable feeling of certainty that he has the right stuff in him? Well, says the Bible, quote, let him that standeth take heed lest he fall, unquote. A text that would-be Chelas should consider well before they rush headlong into the fray. It would have been well for some of our lay Chelas. They have thought twice before defying the tests. We call to mind several sad failures within a 12-month. One went bad in the head, recanted noble sentiments uttered but a few weeks previously, and became a member of a religion he had just scornfully and unanswerably proven false. A second became a defaulter and absconded with his employer's money, the latter also a Theosophist. A third gave himself up to gross debauchery and confessed it with ineffectual sobs and tears to his chosen guru. A fourth got entangled with a person of the other sex and fell out with his dearest and truest friends. A fifth showed signs of mental aberration and was brought into court upon charges of discreditable conduct. A sixth shot himself to escape the consequences of criminality on the verge of detection. And so we might go on and on. All these were apparently sincere searchers after truth and passed in the world for respectable persons. Externally, they were fairly eligible as candidates for chelaship, as appearances go. But within all was rottenness and dead men's bones. The world's varnish was so thick as to hide the absence of the true gold underneath, and the resolvent doing its work, the candidate proved in each instance but a gilded figure of moral dross from circumference to core.
Thank you.
Let's say something quick. That book they were referring to earlier was Zanoni.
Yeah.
Which, I had read that years ago. I hadn't heard anybody mention it, but if anybody's wondering what it is, it's really, really cool.
Surprised it hasn't been made into a movie.
No kidding, huh?
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. And it's gotta be in public domain.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But the book, it's a story of love and occult aspiration. By way of introduction, the author confesses it is so chance that some years ago in my younger days, whether of authorship or life, I felt the desire to make myself acquainted with the true origins and tenets of the singular sect known by the name of the Rosicrucians. A manuscript came into his hand written by what Bulgard Lytton described as an unintelligible cipher, a manuscript which thought through the author's own interpretation became as a note. It's really cool. It's been years, but I just remember being really blown away by especially the verse of it. Really, really great.
If I may, through the years of the occult or even learning the Rosicrucian aspects of the body of reading that, I became inspired, actually, kind of like what you guys just mentioned about the Zanoni. I actually wrote a book by name Omen, in Israel, or Hebrew, it means faithful messenger, faithful one. I wrote a book called The Book of Omens, Fantasy Becomes Reality, because where I feel like innately we're all looking for a connection or a bridge to prove or I don't know, whip a wand out and be like abracadabra, right? And it appears before you. But I think that
Halloween.
and then I think the book of Omens, it was a very serious literature that I wrote at the age of 26, 27, when I came into the knowledge of what I was pertaining upon. And it wasn't I was describing anything pertinent or like the entity of what it was, but what I was learning in it was how to incandescently make what I was hearing. And my best friend Noble, actually, she's known me since I was 7. I call her the observer. She helped me, and I wrote this whole book in a day. And it's 83 pages, and it talks about the alchemicalization of your thought becoming reality. And every single person who has ever read this and has always, in some regard, come back to me and they've told me anything that they've asked for in that regard, it's either manifested or it has given them some form of enlightenment or some form of relief, as in the Messiah truth that goes brotherly love, truth, and belief. Those are also offered, as well as the Rosicrucian tenet of know thyself and not shalt know the universe.
Very familiar.
Good.
And I'll bring in a copy of the book for you guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
But so, we see that the first part, it was, the rules, right? And the second part, this is not a child's play, not a child's play, but again, I think she just gave us what happened in the worst case scenario. And, at her time, obviously, they knew how, because as you mentioned some word that you become visible, your inner part becomes visible to them, to the masters. And therefore they can judge by that. Several times over here mentioned that, for example, the last part of the, let me see, the first page that we read at the very end, where it says that Chela achieved what defined the other day by Mahatma, that psychic resolvings, which eats away all dross and leaves only the pure gold behind. So there's different meanings to this, which means that when the student becomes sincere student, and you try to live the life that you can, then it seems like karma, you sort of like accelerate karma. And you not get all things from your own nature that you expect you have. As you mentioned earlier, you don't know, I don't know my own nature until I am put to the test. Then it was here somewhere, right? When you try, it says, no man or woman knows his or her moral strength, so both sides, until he is tried. And so the idea is that something happened with the students that because you want to purify yourself, so the dross come to the surface. And many people, what people is seeing, you're angry, you do this, you do that, you don't look like a good person, but it's only the dross getting to the surface, only to purify all the gold in yourself. Without purifying getting the gold out of the metals. So all the metals go to the surface of the dross first. But the idea is that it's a good sign in a way that you becoming or you purifying yourself. And therefore, when we meet and study, we try to be really good brothers, because one way that your friend or student is your teacher, is not only when he's telling you white things. Maybe he made you angry. Maybe he showed you a part that you didn't like about him or yourself. But he's your teacher too. So there are many cases of how we become teacher and disciple at the same time. It's not only the goody stuff, Oh, you're my teacher now because you just leave this bell in my mind, but maybe you told me something I don't like to hear. And that's part of being a teacher. But it's up to me to how I feel. And it's part of the draws, maybe I need to work with it. So therefore we know that we never feel saying in groups. There's no sense.
Yeah. It's so impressive, or not just impressive, but serendipitous that this came about right before, the 20th century, that not this for the first time, but again, this reassertion universal brotherhood, because man, the next few decades after that, it was really headed, the world just went opposite. And so it's really important that it was delivered then,
And continues now.
Yeah.
This is Dosha and then you next.
Well, I was just gonna, along with what you were sharing, I was thinking of, in the Phaedrus, it speaks in regards to, and it's also a common idea, but in regards,
Plato.
yeah, but in regards to, this isn't the words in Phaedrus, but it references the idea of the oyster and the pearl, and the oyster and the shell, the body and the shell, oyster. But the remembrance, what came, when I read that the first time, it came to mind in regards to there's usually always the beautiful pearl. And it's the, that grit that makes that, so, and the other thing that I was thinking of, there was a description that was given of, the weaving. If you turn a beautiful weaving over, it's all ugly with stitches and threads, but when you turn it over, it's beautiful. And so, that dross has its place, and that place in the sense of separating one's soul from the body, and things that here, and recognizing and seeing the senses that are a detriment, or responding, that there's that medium of between pain and pleasure, and where you were talking about the extremes. So anyway, I just want to bring that up because those two images came to mind. Because there is a place for dross. I mean, our soul is, our self is inhabits the body, and it's a beautiful body. I mean, it's intelligent, and we're here to learn and to remember, what we knew. And so, anyway, so I just wanted to share that.
That weeding example is really good. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yes, so this reminds me of someone I know. I guess they were, I guess they're unconsciously going through this path. And who's Rudolf Steiner? He has a book of knowing inner worlds and something like that. So this person started reading it, and in there it talks about the guardian of thresholds. So like in the path of like the guardian of threshold, there's this guardian thing, or whatever, that stands between the threshold of like going through, like, because I remember the sutras in the Patanjali sutras, he speaks about like the different paths, and he says like the astral realm is like, everyone thinks like when they reach the astral realm, it's like when they meet and make it, but it's really shadow, because it's just one of ego, like, oh, I can do this, do that, and it's really like another path. So I think they explain, I don't know if it's in whichever one, but he explained to me of how like he studied and like did all this time, and then so his like astral vision started becoming more, and in his dreams he started to travel more. But then when he reached past the shadow, he went there, and then the guardian of thresholds popped up. And when as he's saying this, I also read another book. It said that it was like you have to do a lot of work on yourself if you're going to do this alchemical transformation, because you go to the fire, everything is brought to the fire to transmute. So that's your good and your bad and everything. And of course, like whatever you have more is going to be more of the impurity or dispurity of the gold that you're creating, whatever you want to call it. But through this experience, this person, he explained to me that the dross actually becomes his guardian of threshold. So when you go walk in there, the guardian just pops up, and all that, the guardian could be like, the guardian is no harm, but what you see inside of it is all this dross, all this stuff that like you need to purify, but it's there if you don't purify it. So he explained to me that he went there, and he could like see it like behind. It's like this place of like just pure, of like everything, purity, ecstasy, and all these things. But when you try to go, the guardian showed up, and he explained it as like something he'd never seen before, and he felt so much fear immediately, like that he got scared, and he thought it was like an evil spirit. So he's like, Jesus' name, if you're not in Jesus or something, like. And then he woke up, but then he started feeling. He's like, no, this wasn't a spirit or anything. And then like an evil spirit or anything. So as time went on, he ended up having another dream when he went to that place behind the guardian. And then when he went there, he explained that he felt all the ecstasies of everything great that you could possibly feel on the earth, like happiness, joy, like sexual completion, like friendship, all these things all at once. And he said that he couldn't stand there. He like went in there and he couldn't take it, because his mind couldn't believe that all that was happening at once. And then someone comes up to him, which is like the guardian was like, hey, you can stay here if you want. And then he was like, okay, but like, what would happen if I stay here? And he was like, well, you'll be here forever. Yeah. The Joe was like, yeah, the things in paradise. Yeah, so he's like, okay, well, I have to my body. And he was like, who cares about your body? Like, you're here. So that goes on to attachment. From what I hear about this, it goes on to attachment because we're going to leave our body. Like in yoga, you achieve yoga, which is kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like a spiritual suicide, but not really, because you're just choosing to like leave. So he was like, wait, I don't want, but he's like, what's going to happen to my memory? And then explained, he was like, yeah, well, you're going to be here. Well, then you're going to forget what about your whole birth life. And then you're just going to probably start again. Then he's like, what? And then when I got listen to that, I was like, oh, it made sense to me because he never, like, because it's like he like was skipping that middle part. He would have just got blinded by all the ecstasy and everything, and then he would have not understood the whole path. He would start all over again. Sure. So he was like, no, I don't want to do it. He fell right back into the bed. And then he was like, fuck, you know, it's super others, but he was like, dang, because he had to like come back and learn everything. So that just showed me because I don't know, because I think the second time it was like he made it past like the first fear, but the second fear was like he was of him losing the pain. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Like he felt like he still needed the pain and the attachment of like his body and everything. And that's like the second thing, because he got like all you have to do is walk through. So he finally walked through the doorway. But then we walked through the door. He's like, whoa. And this is like too much cold for me.
Similar in religion, in Western religion, when they talk about if you were to be at the feet of God with like unworthy, you'd be blinded and burned. You know, what they're talking about is chelatship is, you know, tempering yourself so you can do certain things, and you know, some of these things won't drive you to madness or just, you know, gluttonous bliss. I mean,
because it's like when you know, it's like one thing I remember when I decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go out and I'm just gonna experience like just learning what love is like unconditionally from whoever I met. And then as I decided to go on that journey, I became like more promiscuous in the way of like I just was like falling in love all the time, and then I just got like lost into everything, and then I'm just like, whoa, like I just lost complete control because I'm just like, so I had to take a vow of celibacy. And I take a vow of celibacy, so I got stopped. So I was like, but then I went too much into that side. And then I'm like, no partnership. But I know that if I was that dude and I went in there, like it would have just drove me crazy for that feeling of that, because I was like, I don't know if this is possible.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because she also they talk about, the teachers talk about going at this not in the rush. You know, you have to be totally ready for, you know, possible celibacy, or you see what happens when people try to force celibacy on themselves. What happens, you know, or other, you know, aspects of this discipline. You have to kind of you start to practice some of these things, and it's not going to come right away, but you little by little, you then really naturally throw off some of these tendencies. You know, it just becomes like you're like, I really just, that doesn't interest me anymore. Like, it's,
I want to say one thing to that. So my friend also, he explained to me, he was like, one of his biggest reasons of why the guardian didn't let him in the first time is because he was like, so like I said, he was like blinded to the lights, like so much to the light side, that he was like he felt to prosecute like demons and like spirits and all these things that he perceived as dark. And he said like one of the reasons why he was able to walk in the next time was because he learned the lesson of like everything is like a whole cycle. So it's like
everything has a purpose.
Yeah, so he's like he called it the false light prophecy or something like that, where it's like in its own matrix is this continuous battle of light and dark. And it's like the false light, because he's like, I represent the light, but it's really just a matrix that the powers that were, because they're not here anymore, but they're passing away, just they trap people in their minds, so they think that like so. Yeah,
It's like the abyss.
yeah, it's like a
That's what it.
yeah, because they keep thinking they're fighting this darkness thing, and they're like fighting it, but it's not really a fight. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a path, so they're stuck in this thing. So of course, when they go to walk into the next level, this thing that represents all their fears is going to appear to them like it was some demon or something. But he was like that. He went through all the fears of everything like all at once. Then he was like scared to go back for a second. But I think like with like what you're saying, like these teachers in his mind just like put him along the path where he started to learn like, yo, the only thing to be feared of is fear itself, you know. But yeah, I just reminded me of a story because as I'm reading it, I'm like, this sounds just like that experience, you know.
So again, the magic of these writings, it brings up so much from like, you know, you remember stuff or remember things in a different way. Just from teachings, that's great.
The only, I'm sorry to interrupt, the only thing I would like to conclude with that from thing I learned in my own experience here is that you know, God, the Almighty, the inheritor, the God, you, the architect, they didn't give us the spirit of fear, but loving all things was return to love as they have been expelled from us. The thought or notion of matrix or anything, it's just to the user's consciousness that it is. Thank you.
No, I want to say one thing. I just popped in my mind. I remember I was reading in the Bible, but in the Old Testament, there was like this Israel king that wanted to. He was like he had to like
Which part of this?
Solomon.
Yeah.
No, it was before. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it might have been before that also, but it was someone from the bloodline. I think it might be after actually. Yeah, because it was after David when they're like, oh, their family. Because after Solomon, he was like, yo, you guys are gonna go like Babylon. So this dude, they were like, they want to get him off the throne. So someone prayed, and then it goes up to the court of the heavens, and God's sitting in the court with every single spirit and every single person, like every single like entity there is. And he was like, hey, like the only way I could fix this is if I tell my prophet or, you know, like the omen, like you said, whoever the omen is, to tell them that there's like they should go out to war. But then he was like, but the thing is that these prophets, they can't lie. They can't just make up their own thing. So he was like, hey, is there any lying spirits? Like spirits that like are liars in here? And then one's like, oh yeah, I'm a lying spirit. He's like, okay, I need you to do me a favor. He's like, I need you to go down there and lie to my prophet so he can tell the king to go out to war so the king can die. so the real turn. Yeah, it's like so it was around the time of it was after Solomon. It was around the time of, what do they call it? The Jezebel. It was around the time of Jezebel. The Jezebel time. When Jezebel like led it. It was around like one of those time periods, like right after it or during it or so. But that just goes on to the whole thing of like in even in God's counsel, like there's no good and bad. It's just like, all right, your job is like you make lies up.
Yeah, like it's still like how we get. They see a higher algorithm.
Yeah.
Anyone else online? Any comments or questions?
Closing thought before we get to this heavy, awesome quote at the end here. You guys, I want to say something. With that?
I think I forgot.
Okay, Justin.
So I will say that
Please.
in regards to fear, as of March 2020, we saw what happens in society. Yeah, acts on fear, and when people seek to impose the philosophy of fear upon people, and so it's and especially among philosophers and religious students who fell into fear. It was stunning. It was shocking and stunning. So I think that time gave, for me, a window into others. I saw people responding in ways I never thought they themselves would be responding that way. And then it was a mirror you know, into my own self and my way of responding. And so I think that that was a gift that was given to people to see, you know, the response.
Yes.
It was a huge task and society at large failed.
Yeah.
Failed.
Fear is a really powerful tool to harness, especially over.
But it wasn't given from the creator, it was just abstracted from what I personally, from what wonderful Merrick said, when he quoted that specific scripture. Of course, the creator made fear, but it didn't exactly come from the creator. It was an aspect that was a result, rather, it was like a cause and effect, right? So both things have a purpose, and then everything has a cause. So that goes to the law of causation.
Take on the handouts. There's a handouts.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, nice. Here we go. It sounds like it's originally Bhagavad Gita, but I don't know. It's in the Theosophists, July 1883. Definitely sounds Bhagavad Gita. The enemies which rise within the body are to be overcome. The evil passions should manfully be fought. Who conquers these is equal to the conqueror of worlds. Yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot harder to become a true Chela than conquering these worlds. Actually, like the material world.
Can you get just slower?
The enemies which rise within the body are to be overcome. The evil passions should manfully be fought. Who conquers these is equal to the conqueror of worlds.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for coming, everybody. Good one. Barbara, have a good night. Rose, have a good night.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they're good. They're good.